this little baby surprisingly crawled into the chimpanzee's cage. The man outside the cage stretched his arm out to pull the baby, but the chimpanzee didn't seem to like him. Yet the man was not prepared to give up. He finally managed to grab the baby's shoelaces, and the angry chimpanzee suddenly reached out his finger. The man could only laugh awkwardly, still risking danger. Just as the baby started crying and sought help from the chimpanzee, it immediately stood up, creating an oppressive atmosphere. The feeling was incredibly thrilling. Another accomplice sneakily used a mop to hook the baby's clothes. Just about to succeed, the chimpanzee promptly saved the baby. The next move was an overpowering attack, causing the accomplice to experience a feeling like flying. It turns out they were all kidnappers aiming for the baby. Not long ago, they disguised themselves as photographers and came to the wealthy family's house with the goal of kidnapping this adorable baby. And the little baby, not at all courteous, gave Eddie a welcome gift. They then took advantage of the parents' inattention, quietly took the baby away, leaving behind only a ransom note. However, upon returning to their hideout, the babysitter, Nobby, fell asleep first. The baby then crawled out on its own along the window. Within a short while, he crawled to the roof. Curiously looking down, his saliva unconsciously dripped, coincidentally landing on Eddie's neck. The kidnappers, who snapped back to reality, hurried to find the baby. But by the time they got to the roof, the baby was chasing a pigeon and had climbed onto a plank. Eddie rushed over immediately, but was squarely hit by the plank lifted by the baby. Just as Eddie was disoriented, the baby just happened to crawl to the opposite side. Willie, out of anger, threw the plank away. Willie and Nobby decided to carry the injured boss and jump to the other side.
One, two, three.
And Eddie fell hard. It was absolutely unbearable to watch. Willie and his accomplice hurried downstairs to check, and the baby just happened to pass by them. By the time they noticed, the baby had crawled into a woman's vegetable basket. So, they followed her all the way. But this woman was not someone to be messed with. Immediately launching a combination of punches, the three kidnappers were no match for the hefty girl. Meanwhile, the little baby had crawled onto the dangerous road. The baby crawled out from under a car, navigating alone in the middle of the road. He cleverly dodged all the cars, yet no one noticed him. A truck happened to drive by. It was incredibly dangerous. The three kidnappers almost wet their pants when they saw this scene. At this point, the little baby had successfully crawled to the other side of the road, while the three kidnappers weren't so lucky. They were panic-stricken. Without even looking, they jumped into the ditch on the opposite side. Meanwhile, the baby quietly crawled into the zoo. By the time the three arrived, the sight before them left them completely dumbfounded. What should they do now? In no time, the little guy had become good friends with the chimpanzee. While they were sound asleep, Eddie secretly reached into the cage, slowly pulling the baby out. Just as he was about to succeed, the chimpanzee suddenly woke up. The orangutan beside them cheered for the chimpanzee, and poor Eddie got stuck on the cage. With the cover of the chimpanzee, the little one embarked on a new journey. Afterwards, the trio finally spotted the baby in the park. The clever little one quickly crawled into a pipe. This time, the trio was smart. They ran directly to the other end of the pipe to intercept him. They finally caught the little baby, but just as they were rejoicing, two police officers came walking towards them. The trio had to pretend to enjoy the scenery. Just as the police were questioning them, the baby suddenly grabbed some parts of Eddie. Eddie had no choice but to feign calm. Then, the little one surprisingly pulled out a lighter.
Got a bad heart.
The police thought, this guy must be a little off in the head. Unexpectedly, after the two police officers had just walked a few steps, they came back to chat with them. Nobby was quite a talker, but Eddie's butt started to burn, causing him great torment inside. They finally managed to shake off the officers. As the police looked back, they wondered where that delicious smell of barbecue was coming from. It was making them salivate. Having done his job, the little baby sneaked away again, while Eddie's pants were already smoking. Seeing the fire couldn't be extinguished, Clever Willie immediately thought of a solution. A big bull downstairs passed over the baby's head. Luckily, no danger occurred. Then, the baby surprisingly climbed onto a steel plate, drawn by the side of cookies on top. Suddenly, the steel plate was hoisted up by workers, and the baby was also hoisted up along with it. By the time the kidnappers noticed, the baby had already risen high into the sky. So, The trio quickly rode an elevator to catch the baby. When the baby passed by, Willie jumped onto it, thinking he was about to succeed. He hadn't expected the lucky little guy to escape another disaster. Nobby tried to save Willie, but ended up being hoisted up as well. Nobby couldn't hold on anymore and eventually fell down. Willie also jumped down to catch the baby, but ended up with both legs incapacitated. When he regained consciousness, the elevator was going down. At this point, Eddie finally found the baby, who only left a puddle of drool before turning away. Eddie smartly walked over. Was smashed blind, Eddie accidentally pulled the rope. The result accidentally started the mixer. Eddie was instantly drenched and turned into a mud man, while the baby escaped once more via the lift. Fearless Eddie jumped onto the hook. Then, the end of work bell rang, and the workers subsequently turned off the switch. In a very short amount of time, they all went home from work. The baby also happened to reach the ground, leaving unlucky Eddie hanging alone. In the end of the story, the baby safely returned home, and the bad guys received their due punishment. What a lucky little guy. I'm Lost Snail. See you next time.